but it's
That's right, it's Friday afternoon, filling in on the Tom Hartman program. I'm Carl Frisch. I've been here Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It's 20 after. It's been a delight being here. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Art Levine. He is the contributing editor to Washington Monthly and a contributor as well to Salon, The Nation, The Atlantic, and many other publications. We're talking about his piece in Salon right now that you must go and read at salon.com, titled The Dark Side of Bain's Success. Art, thanks for sticking around.
Well, thanks very much. I also want to tell your listeners there's a short summary version of it at Huffington Post that's also a place for you to easily leave comments and your views about these issues. And
Absolutely.
And before we finish, I do want to mention his current ties to a fellow who owns another abusive residential teen chain, or at least allegedly so, is Mel Sembler, who's his Florida finance co-chair. But I'd be glad to tell you about my undercover visits, too.
Yeah, that's what fascinates me. In your piece, you talk about going undercover at some of these places in a few different states. What was that like?
Well, essentially what happened is that for months, eventually they relented and they allowed me and they gave me a kind of, tour of one of their supposedly showcase facilities with the initials SUS of the Carolinas, S-U-W-S, the Carolinas near Asheville. But before then, I had to go on my own and basically pretend to be relatives of loved ones who I was hoping to place at these facilities for treatment. And so one of the places I went to was, Youth Care of Utah. And there, the person showed me around, and then she proceeded to, she showed me around, and I went through and she sort of with pride stood next to one of the isolation rooms and showed how she looked at people to make sure that they were, being monitored appropriately when they're in an isolation room. And then she brought up on her own the death of Brendan Blum. I didn't ask her about it. I just wanted to see what sort of stuff they told me. And she said, among other things, well, it was a really shock for all of us. And then she said, well, fortunately, the family is not, and her terms were, hard against us, meaning angry. And at that moment, there was this wrongful death lawsuit being settled. Well, she's telling me, well, they're not angry at us. And then she said something which is sort of this blithe response, well, these things happen. And that sort of attitude, like these things happen, this is one of the elements that I found. And then I went to Island View undercover and pretended, Island View, which is near Youth Care, also in Utah, I basically, with Island View, I said I had a daughter I wanted to place, and in Youth Care, I said I had a son with Asperger's. So in Island View, I had learned from a woman named Colleen Davidson, who's quoted on the record, how they basically, and this is widespread throughout the troubled teen industry, did not believe her when she said she was sick. This is one of the key issues. The whole mindset is these are troublemaking kids who are lying malefactors and probably near sociopaths. That is the mindset that governs it. In fact, when the GAO talked about this, Greg Kutz testified. He said the only way that these people are going to believe that a kid is telling the truth is when his heart stops or his pulse stops.
Remarkable.
Essentially, this was in testimony in 2007. I mean, I'm paraphrasing it a little bit, but that was the thrust of his comments. They don't believe them until they stop breathing or their pulse stops.
Well, at least the Romneys made a buck.
Yes, and we don't know how much, because essentially the amounts, if and when tax returns are ever fully revealed, we could figure out how much. So the company itself, CRC, has had uneven profits over the years. Some years they actually did not even make a profit during the crash, post-crash, sort of in 2008, 2009. But the revenues have bounced back up, and they earn about $450 million in revenue. They serve 30,000 people daily, mostly opiate addicts, mostly at methadone clinics, which is their big revenue source. And they have 140 facilities around the country.
Well, I'm curious, when you were undercover, did you ask certain kinds of questions that might...
oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
Something, I'm thinking something along the lines of, what are the qualifications of the people that are here on night duty?
Yeah, well, I didn't ask that, but I did inquire, and they were reassuring me, like at Island View, that they were licensed and well qualified, although I've had some indications that I cannot confirm, I'm not saying definitive, that maybe some of the licensing claims are not accurate, but I cannot confirm that, and I'm not saying that for sure, but that's what I learned subsequently. But one of the things was I was real interested in asking them questions about what the alumni who felt victimized and abused there felt that way, and felt, that it was psychologically torturous for them, and medical neglect allegations. I was asking questions along those lines. So essentially they confirmed in their positive spin way what happened. So for instance, this woman, Colleen Davidson, spat up blood, begged to see a doctor, was very sick, and the nurse didn't bother, the in-house nurse didn't come by for a few hours, and because the blood had washed away, the nurse said, well, there's no proof that it's true, so we're not going to call a doctor. And so when I asked about that kind of scenario to the admissions director, show me around, she said, well, we'll send somebody over, but we've got to make sure, that there's proof there, essentially is what she was saying, that there's something there before they send them on and check at a hospital. And then I found, and then similarly, this young woman described isolation treatments and these vicious encounter therapies that were verbally vicious, encounter therapies that were so horrifying that the young women she knew, where each of the people had to make up and attack each other, they were so reluctant to do it, they were choking themselves to not go to the therapy, and one girl put feces in her own eye so she would get sick.
Art, it's absolutely amazing. You can find more from Art. Follow him on Twitter, ArtL7. I guess the only thing they didn't try was putting these patients in a dog carrier on the Romney's car. But like I said, at least the Romneys made a buck. Thanks a lot for joining us, Art.
Right. Thank you so much for having me.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program. Filling in, I'm Carl Frisch, and we will be right back after this.